Hey, so glad to connect, Richa. Glad that Pragmatic has organized this for us to help the larger community overall of aspiring PMs. To tell you about my introduction and journey. So I started my first half of my career professionally was more in the B2B space, where I was as a program manager and handling GTM and PNL for different regions. And when I shifted to the B2C tech startup space entirely for consumer internet, especially, and that's where I've grown from a program manager to a product manager now, and especially spending the last 6 months with Hotstar now. So yes, had a bunch of questions for you, but would love to know. I think the community would love to know about your introduction as well.
Absolutely. Nice to meet you, Atin. My name is Richa, and I have been at Google for a little over 4.5 years now. And like you, my journey has been slightly similar. Maybe the number of years is a little longer, but I've also moved into product from being a program manager in my past life, as I call it. And right now I work on Google Ads and a very specific segment of Google Ads, which is catered to small businesses in emerging markets. So think of mom and pop stores and how they can leverage the advantage of Google to advertise their small businesses, which right now they don't have access to do. So that's my focus area right now, and I've been doing this for the last 1.5 years. It's a pretty interesting product because very few times in your career you get to work on a product from 0 to 1, and especially in a large company like Google. So I'm pretty excited about what I do right now. It's super fun. And prior to Google, I was also in a B2B fintech startup. So my journey has had a lot of different paths, but all of them leading up to where I am right now. So I was in a fintech startup, and I started as one of the very early employees, and then I spent about 7 years with them. So within that span, I played a lot of different roles, and I worked with them in 2 different countries. So and prior to that, I was a consultant. So yeah, it's been a pretty fun ride.
Amazing. Yeah, no, a bunch of different experiences. And I think like we've seen with different PMs, I think cross-functionally that breadth of experience overall helps in a PM role today as well, right? So glad to hear that. So I had a list of questions. I would love to get started on that, and I think that these are from the lens where I think many of those are relevant to me personally, and where it could help the community too. So let's get started on that.
Okay, I'm going to try my best to answer all your questions.
So I think the way I wanted to give the context to the first question is like, so each of the following questions relates down to one's career goals, right? Which is why I wanted to immediately first understand what are your career goals ahead today, and I think that gives a nice perspective to people when hearing your next answers. Like professionally, what would you say your career goals are ahead for the next 2-3 years?
Yeah. Okay. So my career goals throughout my journey have evolved depending on the phase of life I am in. And I strongly believe that your personal and professional life kind of intermingles in kind of defining the aspirations and goals that you have. At this point, for the next 2 to 3 years, I usually don't think in a 2 to 3 year roadmap because it's kind of hard to work backwards from there. But let's put 5 years and let's see where I see myself in the next 5 years. So the next 5 years, there are a few things I want to accomplish, and those are really broad, and the more granular details are something that I'll figure out as I go. But on a very broad level, I clearly want to build some products that people can use, but these products should be in the line of something that even I can use, right? So in the past, I've worked on very ad-centric products for large customers, which I have never got a chance to personally use because I don't run an Expedia or a Microsoft or companies like that. So clearly my focus in the next 5 years would be to build products that people can use and that people can love. Okay. And this would mean building really simple, easy to use, relatable products. I am not quite married to the idea of the particular domain that I want to be in, but clearly, your experience needs to be aligned with what you've done in the past. So for example, what I'm working on right now, that's something that I absolutely love. Even though it's in the ad space, it's for really small businesses, and I can relate to it because at some point in my life I had a small business too, and I knew just how much I struggled to advertise my startup to the rest of the world. And clearly life's come a full circle that I'm actually working on something like that. So clearly my big goal in the next year is to land this product and make sure that people love it absolutely. And then from there, just continue working in the small businesses or the money space, because that's something that I've absolutely enjoyed. A much longer term goal would be to see if I can move on from building products to building companies, but that's like a very, very long term goal. So let's see how that lands.
Makes sense. I think that gives a good flavor to our conversation. So that segues to the next question, which is, now that we know more about Richa's future goals, how were your goals when you were shifting from program management to product management, interviewing with Google, and were strongly convinced about that? What were your long-term professional goals at that point, which you were very clear about?
Yeah, so I think there were a few things that I was very clear on right from the beginning of my career, that I wanted to do things that felt meaningful to me.
Okay.
And again, everyone's definition of what they enjoy versus what they don't enjoy so much is very different, right? And I was pretty fortunate in my career to have had mentors and managers who also saw that potential when I didn't see it. So they would challenge me on doing things that even I didn't think that I was capable of doing. And that kind of also helped maneuver me in the direction and, lead me into building, becoming a product manager. I think even before I had this formal title of a product manager, I think I was already doing a lot of this work related to building products. And, it was very organic for me. It was not overnight that, from tomorrow I will become a PM or something like that. No, because I started as a consultant, and even then, that was like the very, very beginning of my career, where I didn't even understand how organization worked and etc. But even then, even when I was in my initial project meetings, as we used to call it, I would always ask questions around, why are we doing this? Why do we have this feature? And that was, at that time, I wasn't thinking that I wanted to become a product manager. Like, I didn't even know that title like that existed, because in a consulting world, it's a totally different sphere. But then when I moved into my startup, Yodlee, I keep calling it as a startup because it was a startup when I joined it. But when I moved into Yodlee, I had the similar questions, even though I was and I played a lot of different roles in a company before, at Yodlee before Google. It was quality engineering, and then I became like a quality engineering manager. So I was leading a team of quality engineers, and I moved into program management, and then I was leading a team of program managers. So every time I think I was on the tables in a meeting with my peers or the leaders of the company, I always had the questions around, why are we doing what we are doing? So I always thought beyond executing, and that's when my then manager recommended, and like, you have a pretty solid product sense. Why have you never thought about becoming a product manager? I'm like, no, but I love doing what I do. I love getting things done.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, I did not deliberately move into product management, because I thought that I was still learning the ropes of becoming a program manager, and I wanted to be a very, very solid PGM before I did anything. And that's something that I like to do as well. Like, whatever I pick on, I want to do a pretty solid job of it before moving on to the next thing. So it was very organic for me. But when I joined Google, I joined as a program manager. And again, I was fortunate. Google is a great company where you can really define your career the way you want it to, and you always get the support, and which is where I again got the support from my managers. And that's when I decided that, no, I think it was time for me to do something more and just expand my sphere. So my sphere just expanded from doing execution to moving into doing why we are going to do it. So until then I was thinking of how, and then I moved on to doing whys, and I think it's just gradually going to expand.
Yeah. That makes sense. I think summarize, you your goals then were about finding something meaningful always in your career, and broken down into having the right mentors, having an organic journey, and then seamlessly transitioning between execution to a problem discovery mindset as well.
Yeah.
Right? You wanted to cover the whole sphere because your organization also allowed that, so it became easier.
Yeah, and I also asked for it. I think a lot of companies are pretty open about saying that, but a lot of companies may not even know that. But there are like smaller companies, like Yodlee was much smaller in size than Google, and there was never an official rule about a 20% project or stuff like that Google kind of talks about. But even there, I got to do things that I wanted to do because I asked for it. So I think asking for it is super important. And I think the one thing that also helped me was when we do these performance evaluations, etc. And when you talk about the strengths and the areas of improvement, most of us don't quite take that seriously. I take my performance evaluations very, very seriously. And I make sure that my managers take it very seriously too. So I keep asking them that, hey, I need you to tell me what I need to work on, and I need you to tell me what my strengths are, and I'll continue to work on that. So I think that also built into where I realized my strengths were in the areas that I wanted to continue improving upon. So it was all a mix of a lot of things. So I spent a lot of time introspecting on where I want my career to be.
Amazing. Yeah. Big fan of self-evaluations and mentor-driven evaluations as well. So I do that. Okay, so segueing into the next part of this session, I wanted to talk more specifics about program management and more specifically product management. So I'd love to first understand, so that it's again contextually relevant, your current role exactly. Is it more of a full stack PM? Like from a day-to-day wise, which areas of expertise as a PM are you able to cover? And yeah.
So yeah, my day-to-day changes. But it's to answer your question, yes, it is a full stack PM. It's 100% product manager role. And interestingly enough, you would think that after becoming a product manager, you get to do all these really, I'm trying to look for a word for it, like very, very fancy things, or like you get to sit in like very strategic meetings, and that's all you do all day, which is true. You get to do that. You get to strategize on the product that you want to build. You get to do amazing user research. You get to work with designers and researchers and engineers, and you get to write the vision of the product that you want to build. You get to do all of that. Heck, you also need to execute, and you need to do that a lot more than you did before, because now as a PM, the accountability is all mine, and the success is everyone else's. It's a ground rule of becoming a product manager that you don't get as much credit. You need to be more accountable for when things don't work, but when things work, it's everyone else who's doing it. Because my role that I've seen that I define the vision of the product, and I look at the metrics and everything else, but it takes a team to build a fantastic product, and to be able to get that team to build a fantastic product, you need to have the chops of understanding what you're like, not just the vision of how this product will work, but also how you're going to get to launching it, and then not just launching it, landing it. So that involves a lot of execution. So my role in the very initial cycle of the product is a lot about research, looking at the numbers, the market insights, doing market research, etc. Then it evolves into some really heads down work of documenting what I have found, writing into a PRD, and then getting that PRD reviewed with a lot of stakeholders, because at least at Google, we touch a lot of different teams. We just can't launch a product in silos. You've got to talk to a lot of different people, launching that getting that PRD approved, working with engineers so that they can work on the design doc. So I need to have my technical chops on hey, when my engineers come and tell me that maybe this is the way we want to build this versus that. So I need to be able to hold my ground and tell them, yeah, I think it's a good idea, or hey, it's not such a good idea. Can we try this other approach or something like that? I also need to sit with the UX designers, and I am not a designer, so clearly I'm not an expert in their field, but I need to sit with them, and I need to be able to rationalize why we are doing X versus Y. So I need to have that hat on. I need to clearly have my program manager hat on, and I think my PGM experience helps me immensely, because I don't get bogged down by execution details and creating spreadsheets of project tracking, and I still create my project trackers. At some point I need to stop doing it, but I still do that. And then talk with legal and privacy and all sorts of these different teams, which I didn't get a chance to do before, but understanding of how that entire ecosystem functions. So my skills vary on a different sense, but I get to use all of these different brain cells.
And then post launch as well, or during the testing, you're monitoring the metrics as well, etc.
Absolutely, I do the QA. You need to test you need to eat your own dog food. So the dog fooding, the ensuring that the product's working as expected. If it's not working, which a lot of times it doesn't, you think of a feature in a certain way, and when it starts, like when you test it end to end, you're like, oh my god, so many things are broken. So you need to have that thing on. Hey, why is certain thing working or not? So be able to test it. Prioritize the bugs. So once you do the testing, a lot of bugs get generated, but what is important versus what is not, like you cannot fix everything. It especially happens in a lot of 0 to 1 products, because you don't have something in the like something prior that you can fall back on. So everything is either 0 or 1. So it happens a lot more when you're building a product from scratch. So a lot more issues come up. So testing, and then of course metrics are always important at every part of the product development process. So it's a pretty heavyweight job.
Got it. Yeah, so it's fully, as you said, it's full stack. So I get there's a lot of uncertainty involved. There's a lot of chaos involved there, and which is where. So there's some follow-up questions later in this, but the next question was. What would you advise for someone who is yet to figure out, and there's a lot of people, I think the majority people who get into this role either get into it accidentally, or there are several who try to forcefully get into it, right? And they may be great fits as well, but my point is that for them to figure out their long-term roles and strengths, which is what they want to double down on, and PM from the outside has a lot of hype, but maybe one is just suitable for a program manager, which is just as challenging. So I think you already covered this answer in the earlier question, which is that you organically figured that out. You had the right mentors to guide you. You questioned yourself the right ways, etc. Anything else to add to this point, where someone through some experiment might be feeling that they are relevant for a product manager role, but maybe there's something else, and overall just being more cognizant of their strengths and what their long-term clarity is? Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's super important, and you made a very important point that it sounds like becoming the PM is the ultimate thing, but it clearly boils down to what you want to do. I know a lot of people at Google who decided not to become a PM. They love being a program manager, and they love doing what they do, and they are doing a stellar job of it. And when I asked them as to, hey, I thought you would be a great PM, why didn't you go down that path? And they're like, I love doing what I do. I don't want to become a PM. Some of them tried becoming a PM, and they said, no, I think I just love being a data analyst, because I love working on data day in and day out, and I don't want to get into those hundreds of meetings. It's not something that I enjoy. So I think for the answer here would be, just don't look into the frills of the title, right? In the end, the title and everything else follows. Like I said, even before I was a product manager, I was already doing the work of a product manager, being on a ladder of a program manager. So I didn't chase the title, I chased the work. I chased the projects that I wanted to be a part of. And I think that's when you can make an impact. Because when you're not chasing a title and you're just interested in working on a particular project or a product or an idea, you give more than your 100%. And that's where your skills and your strengths and everything else shines. While when you're chasing something like a title, sometimes a moment, like an element of fear may creep in, because you're like then chasing like, oh my god, that's becoming a PM is like my ultimate goal. And sometimes it takes away from your main vision of what you really want to do. So never chase the titles. Sometimes doing these 20% projects helps. So talk to people in your company and ask them that I found out about this project. and I really want to be a part of it in whatever capacity. Can I help you? I have done that a lot. I still do that. Like even being a PM, like I just go to a lot of like when I attend a few different meetings. If I'm interested in something, I'll just go out and I'd be like, hey, can I help you in something? I really want to be a part of this. This is super exciting for me. I don't need credits. I just need to learn how you guys are doing it. And sometimes I think a lot of times people are just happy to offload their work to you because they're inundated with a lot of work.
Plus, your learning and recall from that way of picking up that knowledge is a lot more than theoretical way of picking that up.
Absolutely. No number of books can help you what your hands-on experience can help you with.
Great. Another question so related to that was, so if someone is dicey because program management role is the closest role to a product manager in many ways, from the execution standpoint at least. What's the difference in that role in a company like Yodlee, which is more IT related to a more technology customer focused company like Google? What do you think the main 2-3 differences would be in that role?
So
apart from the use case itself, but let's assume that the use cases are the same. Let's assume that the industry was the same. Still, what would be some other elements that would be different?
it's a very thin line, but a good product manager.
Sorry, program manager, I meant.
Okay. So you're asking me differences between a program and a product manager?
Program manager in Yodlee versus program manager in Google.
Okay. Program manager in Yodlee versus program manager. Okay, I know this like the back of my hand. Sure. Program manager at Yodlee and program manager at Google, they're pretty similar in nature. Trust me, the work is pretty similar. Or maybe I feel it's similar because my style of working is very adaptable to wherever I go. But the one major difference that I can see, because I can compare the two, is the scale. So the scale at which Google operates is immense, and the cross-functional collaboration is way higher and way more challenging than it would be in a company like Yodlee. And that's because at Yodlee there were far fewer people, there were far fewer organizational complexities, and everybody was working towards this one common goal. While at Google, every PA, which is a product area, like teams are called PAs at Google, every PA has their own OKR, and as a program manager, my job was to ensure that our OKRs aligned with their OKRs, and if our goals were not a part of their product or project roadmap, make sure that I found a way to get our projects listed in there. So that kind of makes this joint collaboration, and that's very challenging. Convincing people why your project is more important than someone else's project is a hard task, and it's much harder at Google because there are way too many people and there are way too many very important projects, and especially in the world of ads, there's a lot of money involved, and people are more inclined towards working on projects that will give the revenue uplift versus the ones that are slightly more risky. But again, you have to prove, or you have to convince your cross teams on how and why your project or product will benefit the company in the long run. So it's far more. Those conversations are much longer and far more complex. But the work remains the same.
No, that's one of the most stressful things that PMs find: internal selling.
Yep, internal selling.
Okay, so next question would be, what's the three traits that you? This is despite someone like me who already knows, who's going to start Google interviews next month, who's gone through the right resources and understands what Google's looking for. But from your end, given you've been 4 years plus in the company, what are the three traits you understand that are essential for a Google PM? And example, when you're potentially hiring someone, what are the three traits you'd look for?
Yeah. So product sense is very important. And I think that's something that I can't stress enough on. And it's not something any books can teach you. You either have a product sense or you don't have a product sense. Sometimes, and product sense means thinking the big picture, thinking how several of your potential users or customers are going to use that product of yours, being able to think the broad use cases, being able to think, how this product will work in the broader sunlight, as I call it, and being able to understand and being able to connect those dots is super important. And it doesn't come overnight. It's sometimes it's just challenging. Like, there are days I struggle with it too. The second would be communication skills, very important, and not just having. I think because internal selling becomes far more important when you're a product manager, because you're not just at the execution stage. You're even before that, ensuring that your product idea sees the light of the day. You got to convince a lot of people as to why we should be doing this, what is the reason. And that comes with understanding your domain really well, understanding your use cases really well, understanding your customers really well, because there are a lot of very smart people at Google. So you may think that you have covered all ground, but when you go talk to them, they go back to you, be like, did you think about this? And you're stumped because you probably haven't thought about it. So going deep is important, going broad is equally important. So having product insight and being able to communicate that is super important. That's number 2. Number 3, you got to be technical. You got to be technically sound. Google's an engineering, and I'm saying this for Google because it's an engineering-driven company, very large infrastructure and very complex systems, and you got to be able to understand how those things work.
Yeah. Especially because everything's done at scale. So
everything is done at scale. Yeah.
So you need to be aware of all the nuances it'll affect.
Yeah. And but again, when you're interviewing, you may not necessarily know the infrastructure at Google. Clearly, it's not possible. But what you can demonstrate or what you can talk about is how you understand how technology works. So it's called system design.
Yeah.
So how a particular system will work. So if you have a broad understanding of how a general system will work, you can translate into understanding. And that's what I do. Like, I make a parallel processing of, okay, I understand how this broadly the system would work. Okay, now let me translate it to the area that I'm working on. And it usually works really well. But being technically sound is very important. And that's important, I think, anywhere, no matter which company you go to.
Yeah. So that leads me to ask, basically something personal related to interviews, that when I'm face to face with my interviewer, I will get almost intimidated thinking that this person's a lot smarter, and this is a newer space for me. So while I will genuinely be very confident internally about knowing all my answers and high level covering the problem solving question in the right way, but when I communicate it in that interview environment, even though I have the resources like the whiteboard and my voice and everything else, there are some lapses which the interviewer may think otherwise of, right? And of course, one way around it is to practice more. But anything else that you'd advise to anyone with great potential when they start their interview, when you see their profile background, you've got good referrals from them, let's say, of how they've been full-time at companies as a PM, but they just don't display the same things in the interview because the interview situation intimidates them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a real thing. You may be a great PM, but you may really not be so good at interviews. And it happens to a lot of us. I think mock interviews are crucial to doing that. Reach out to some senior PMs in the industry. Ask them if they can do a mock interview for you. Maybe people you know. And do those interviews, and the most important part of that would be getting the feedback on where you did well versus not. So the familiarity kind of builds that confidence as well. We're nervous about doing interviews because we don't do them every day, right? We don't go out doing interviews, but we do our jobs every day, so which is where we feel a lot more confident. But when it comes to interviews, which happens unless you're job hopping a lot, but interviews are not an everyday thing, or not they probably happen once in a few years. So I think mock interviews are super helpful, and that is where the fear kind of just tapers off, because then you're confident about having that interaction in this closed setting with one-to-one and having those questions. And I think that practice helps a lot more than just reading it theoretically. There are a lot of great online resources now that help you do the mock interview. So you don't have to just go meet people in person. People can actually do mock interviews for you online. So practicing with those, and then working on what your most like the areas that you need to improve on. So for me, I know particularly the analytics part was always a struggle. Like those analytics questions, estimating the values, etc., is where I would fumble so much. So I went head on to it, and I reached out to some peers and some PMs, and I said, guys, I'm really bad at this. I need you to grill me in these interviews. And I had those very grilling mock interviews, and it helped me understand where I was lacking the understanding, and just practicing it helped me.
Yeah, got it. So last two questions here before we round up. One is when you're a PM, you are you're doing the work that you enjoy. Having said that, as you said, like there's a lot of day-to-day execution stuff and coordination of everything that is needed for you to reach the goal. How do you find it? How do you find yourself taking out time for the few areas of as a PM that you would like to spend more time on? For example, you'd like to spend more time on the problem discovery space because that's something you enjoy, and you obviously enjoy following metrics, as you've said in your profile. So if these are two things that you feel are essential for the product success, but the company's process may not allow you that required time, or they have a faster deadline that's needed, how do you go about those challenges?
You got to make time. So I ruthlessly prioritize. I don't go to all the meetings that I'm invited to. I'm invited to a lot of meetings. People just assume that, oh, she's a PM on this product, she should be a part of all the 100 meetings that we have on this project. No, I don't need to be a part of all those meetings. And I block time on my calendar, and I'm pretty stringent about it. So if there's a time block on my calendar, unless there is a pressing emergency, I wouldn't change it. Again, we are all humans, so things happen, but I'm pretty stringent about it. There is a day of the week which I practice as a no meeting day, and I try and be stringent about it as well. At least one half of the day I have no meetings, so it's a block on my calendar. And that's what you need some heads down time on doing things. So I do that by just prioritizing the meetings that I don't need to go to, prioritizing the projects. So like I have like a laundry list of things that I need to do, but every week I sit and prioritize on things that I'm going to tackle, and I focus on those, and I call them my wins. And I don't worry about the things I have not been able to focus on, as long as I'm able to do the things that I prioritize. So I prioritize a lot, and that helps. It's not always easy, but that helps.
Yeah. So wonderful, like how you balance that beautifully, which is my last question. That whilst, and so I think it's more relevant when you're a first time PM or the first year of PM, professionally as the title, especially in a more demanding company and environment like Google, where you are fully committed to that 100% to the KRAs and the OKRs, as you say, in your role. But two tips on how it's worked out for you, given you've also balanced that with internal initiatives like the coffee initiative, which is related to your product community also, I guess. Your initiative for the product that you're building, as well as your own personal fulfillment interest areas outside of work, like your own startup or other things. So how would you say that in the first year as well, when it already to the professionally inclined person who wants to do as much justice to the company, but wants to balance that personal life as well, or personal interests as well. Sometimes those personal interests might come very well in the organization too. Yeah, in the first year, it can be a little hard. Because you're getting into a new role. There are a lot of variables, so it can be a little hard in the first year. So I had to, if I remember correctly, I had to taper down on some of my extracurricular activities that I would do, but I did not kill it completely, because that's my way of
reviving my energy. And I cannot, like, you cannot be working 60 hours a week and expect to be productive a week on week. It doesn't work that way. So you got to be able to find a thing that revives you. For me, that is doing theater. And but again, theater opportunities are not every day. So I would, whenever I had like a play coming up, I would ensure that my practice was happening over the weekends. And that was something that refreshed me so much that I went into the office on Monday super recharged, because I did something that I absolutely loved. On days there are no plays, I clearly the weekend time helps. So I usually never work on the weekends. It's my family time. It's time that's devoted to my family, and that is one way of finding your energy back, because you need to unwind and you need to disconnect from work to be able to connect better. And in office, I think the Coffee Club initiative is very close to me. I'm a huge advocate of mentors and people being able to find the right mentors, because I owe a lot to the mentors in my life. And I was just so passionate about it. So I didn't care about the timings I had to put in, because I really just wanted to launch Coffee Club to help fellow women who felt that they were not able to find the right mentors. So sometimes it's driven out of passion, that you don't care about the hours that you put in, but a lot of times it's again being able to balance this well. And you need to, like I said, block time off. That's time for me, my family, my time. And people are pretty appreciative of that. People then consider you as someone who's very disciplined, because when I do work, but when I'm off, I'm off.
And you said that right. Like when you block time, you generally become far more efficient in that blocked time. And it just makes things easier. So great. So this brings us to the end, and wonderful again chatting with you. And I'd love to see what the community has to say, and I'm sure they'll find great value for people who might be in that uncertain phase of finding out their strengths, figuring out the long-term path, and then doing well in the first 2 years as a PM in whatever environment they are. So I think you've nailed it with some simple basics. I think we over-optimize and try to overthink of some of these things, and I think that's where the community can take some great takeaways. Great, thanks a lot again.
Thank you so much for your time. Great questions.
Yeah.